The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of the dusty hotel in Skidoo, California, and Damien Crawford watched from the porch of his ranch supply store as a woman stepped down, cradling her left arm against her chest in a way that made his jaw tighten with immediate concern. It was August of 1878, and the desert heat shimmered off the packed dirt street like water, but the woman wore a traveling dress buttoned to her throat, her face pale beneath the wide brim of her bonnet. Damien had been expecting her arrival for 3 weeks now, ever since he had responded to her advertisement in the San Francisco newspaper. Clara Ashford was supposed to be his mail-order bride, the woman who would help him build a life on the harsh land he had claimed near the Panamint Mountains. But something was clearly wrong. He crossed the street in long strides, his boots kicking up small clouds of dust. The stagecoach driver was already hauling down a single worn trunk, and Clara stood beside it looking lost and frightened. Up close, Damien could see the way she held herself stiffly, protecting that arm and the faint bruising that colored her jaw beneath the powder she had tried to use to hide it. "Miss Ashford?" he asked, keeping his voice gentle despite the anger already building in his chest. She turned to him with wide eyes, green as spring grass in a land that rarely saw such a color. "Mr. Crawford, that would be me." He gestured toward her arm. "You are hurt." It was not a question, and she seemed to realize that denying it would be pointless. Her shoulders sagged slightly. "It is nothing. I fell during the journey." Damien had been raised by a mother who taught him to recognize lies, especially the kind told by women trying to protect themselves from shame or fear. This was such a lie. He picked up her trunk with one hand and offered his other arm. "My wagon is just there. Let me get you somewhere more comfortable, and then we will talk about this fall of yours." She hesitated, but exhaustion and pain won out over whatever reservations she might have had. Clara placed her good hand lightly on his forearm, and he could feel the tremor running through her. The hotel was too public for what he suspected needed to happen, so he steered her toward his own home, a modest ranch house he had built himself 2 miles outside of town. The wagon ride was silent except for the creak of wheels and the soft sounds of distress Clara could not quite suppress when they hit rougher patches of road. His house was simple but clean, with whitewashed walls and sturdy furniture he had crafted during long winter evenings. Damien helped Clara inside and settled her carefully into the chair by the kitchen table. She looked around with those wary eyes, taking in the neatly made bed in the corner, the dishes stacked on shelves, the rifle mounted above the door. "I am going to examine your arm," he told her, pulling another chair close. "I have set bones before, for horses and cattle and men. If it is broken, leaving it will only make things worse." "It is not your concern," Clara said, but her voice was weak. "You came here to be my wife," Damien replied steadily. "That makes everything about you my concern. Now may I?" She looked at him for a long moment, searching his face for something. Whatever she found there must have satisfied her, because she nodded and extended her injured arm. He could see how much even that small movement cost her. Very carefully, Damien began to unbutton the sleeve of her dress, rolling the fabric back to expose her forearm. What he saw made his blood run cold. The break was obvious, a swelling midway up the bone that spoke of a clean fracture that had been left untreated for days, maybe a week. But it was the bruises that truly enraged him, the clear marks of fingers wrapped around her wrist and upper arm, the kind of bruises that came from someone grabbing and twisting with deliberate force. Damien raised his eyes to meet hers. His voice came out rougher than he intended, edged with barely controlled fury. "Who did this?" Clara's face crumpled, and tears began to slide down her cheeks. "My brother. My half-brother, I should say. After our mother died last year, he became my guardian." He wanted me to marry his business partner, a man twice my age who had already buried 2 wives. When I refused, Marcus became angry. He said I was ungrateful, that I owed him obedience for taking me in after Mother's death. 3 weeks ago, he told me I would marry Mr. Thornton whether I wished it or not. I tried to run, and he caught me at the top of the stairs. He broke your arm, Damien said flatly. He pushed me down the stairs, she corrected, her voice barely above a whisper. I landed badly. He told me it was my own fault for being foolish. Then he locked me in my room. But my friend Sarah helped me escape 2 days later. She brought me money and helped me reach the stagecoach station. I found your advertisement in a newspaper Marcus had left in the parlor. It seemed like Providence, a way to go somewhere he could never find me. Damien forced himself to breathe slowly, to push down the rage that made him want to ride straight back to San Francisco and show this Marcus what it felt like to be hurt by someone stronger. But Clara needed him here, needed him calm and capable. He could see the infection starting at the edges of the break, see the way her skin was hot to the touch. This is going to hurt, he warned her. I need to set the bone properly and then we will clean the wound and splint it. Do you trust me? I do not know you, Clara said honestly. But I have no other choice, do I? You always have choices, Damien told her firmly. You can tell me to stop at any time. You can leave if you wish, though I hope you will not. You can stay here as my guest until you are healed and then decide what you want to do. I am not your brother. I am not any man who would force you into something against your will. Something in her expression softened. Then yes, I trust you. Do what you must. He gave her a leather strap to bite down on and a shot of whiskey to dull the pain. Then, with practiced hands that had learned their skill in the Union Army during the war, Damien set the bone. Clara screamed against the leather, her body going rigid, but she did not pull away. When it was done, he cleaned the wound with boiled water and carbolic acid, wrapped it carefully, and splinted it with 2 flat pieces of wood bound with clean cloth. By the time he finished, Clara had fainted. Damien carried her to his bed and covered her with a light sheet, then sat in the chair beside her, watching the too rapid flutter of her pulse in her throat. She was beautiful despite the signs of suffering, with dark hair that had come loose from its pins and a delicate bone structure that spoke of good breeding. But more than that, she had courage. To endure what she had endured and still have the strength to run. To choose her own path, even when it meant traveling alone into unknown territory, that took a kind of steel he respected deeply. The sun was setting when Clara finally stirred, her eyes opening slowly. She looked disoriented for a moment, then winced as she tried to move her arm. "Stay still," Damien said quietly from his place in the chair. "You need to let it begin to heal." "How long was I unconscious?" "A few hours. You needed the rest." He stood and moved to the stove where he had a pot of soup warming. "Can you eat something?" "I should not be in your bed," Clara said, struggling to sit up. "It is not proper." "Propriety can wait until you are not at risk of fever," Damien replied, bringing her a bowl and spoon. "Eat. Then we will talk about what comes next." She ate slowly, and he could see color beginning to return to her cheeks. When she finished, she set the bowl aside and looked at him directly. "Why are you being kind to me?" The question took him off guard. "Why would I not be?" "You paid for a bride, not an invalid. You could put me back on that stagecoach tomorrow and write to another woman. I came here under false pretenses, not telling you I was injured." Damien pulled his chair closer and sat down, resting his forearms on his knees. "Miss Ashford, I did not pay for a bride like I would pay for a horse or a piece of land. I was hoping to find a partner, someone to share this life with. The advertisement was simply a way to meet someone, since there are not many unmarried women in Skidoo. You came here looking for safety and a new beginning. That is honest enough for me. But I am not what you expected." "No," he agreed. "You are braver than I expected, and you have survived something no person should have to survive. That makes you exactly the kind of woman I would want beside me. If you choose to stay, it will be your choice. If you choose to leave once you are healed, I will help you get wherever you want to go, but I hope you will give this place and me a chance." Clara studied him in the lamplight, and he bore her scrutiny patiently. Finally, she said, "I will stay. At least until I am healed. Then we will see if this arrangement might work." "Fair enough," Damien replied, feeling something warm settle in his chest. "For now, rest. We have time to figure everything else out." Over the next few weeks, Clara healed slowly under Damien's careful attention. He moved his things to a bedroll on the floor, insisting she keep the bed until she was stronger. Every morning he changed her bandages, checking for signs of infection, and every evening he prepared meals that would help her regain her strength. She protested his attentiveness at first, uncomfortable with being cared for, but gradually she began to relax into it. During the long afternoons when the desert heat made outdoor work impossible, they talked. Clara told him about growing up in San Francisco, the daughter of a seamstress and a merchant who had died when she was 12. She spoke of her mother's kindness, the way she had taught Clara to read and write, and to believe she deserved more than just survival. And she spoke of Marcus, the half-brother from her father's first marriage who had always resented his father's second family. Damien, in turn, told her about his own past. He had grown up on a farm in Missouri, the youngest of 4 brothers. When the war came, he had enlisted with the Union Army at 18, serving as a field medic. He had seen terrible things, done what he could to save men who were often beyond saving, and come out the other side with a desperate need for open spaces and peace. After the war, he had drifted west, working as a ranch hand and saving every penny until he could buy his own land. Skidoo, with its harsh beauty and isolation, had felt like the right place to start over. "You ever regret coming here?" Clara asked one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sun paint the mountains gold and red. "Not once," Damien said. "This land is hard, but it is honest. It does not pretend to be something it is not. If you are strong and smart, you can make a good life here. If you are not, it will break you. I prefer that to cities where people smile while they plot against you." "You are thinking of my brother," Clara said quietly. "I am thinking of men like your brother," Damien corrected. "There are good people everywhere and bad people everywhere. But out here, you see who people really are more quickly. There is no room for deception when survival depends on working together." As August turned to September, Clara grew stronger. She began helping around the house, cooking meals with her good hand and directing Damien in tasks that required two. She had a quick mind and a sharp sense of humor that emerged as her fear faded. Damien found himself looking forward to coming inside after a day of work, knowing she would be there with something interesting to talk about or a new recipe she had attempted. He was falling in love with her. The realization hit him one morning as he watched her hanging laundry on the line he had strung between 2 posts, using her injured arm carefully but capably as it continued to heal. She was humming something under her breath, and the sound carried across the yard like birdsong. In that moment, she looked utterly at home, and Damien knew he wanted her to stay not just because she needed safety, but because he needed her. But he held his tongue. Clara had come here fleeing one man who tried to control her life. The last thing Damien wanted was to pressure her into anything before she was ready. So he waited and he hoped, and he continued to be the kind of man she could trust. One afternoon in late September, a rider came to the ranch. Damien was in the barn when he heard the horse, and he emerged to find a well-dressed man dismounting in front of the house. Something about the stranger's bearing, the expensive cut of his clothes, and the way he looked around with an expression of disdain, set Damien's nerves on edge. "Can I help you?" he called, wiping his hands on his work pants. The man turned, and Damien saw the family resemblance immediately. This had to be Marcus Ashford. He was tall and handsome in a cold sort of way, with the same green eyes as Clara but none of her warmth. "I am looking for my sister," Marcus said curtly. "I have been informed she may be in this area. Clara Ashford, traveling alone. She is not well and needs to return home for treatment." Before Damien could respond, the door to the house opened and Clara stepped out. All the color had drained from her face, and she gripped the doorframe with her good hand. "Marcus." "Clara, thank God," Marcus said, striding toward the porch. "I have been searching for you for weeks. Come, we need to get you back to San Francisco immediately. Mr. Thornton has been very understanding about your little episode, but we cannot delay the wedding much longer." "I am not going anywhere with you," Clara said, her voice shaking but firm. "And I am not marrying Mr. Thornton." Marcus's expression darkened. "You are being foolish and ungrateful. After everything I have done for you, this is how you repay me. Running away like a common thief, forcing me to chase across half the state. You broke my arm," Clara said, louder now. "You pushed me down the stairs and locked me in my room. You tried to force me into a marriage I did not want. I owe you nothing." "You owe me obedience," Marcus snapped, mounting the porch steps. "I am your legal guardian, and you will do as I say." Damien moved quickly, putting himself between Marcus and Clara. The lady has made her position clear. "You need to leave." Marcus looked him up and down with contempt. "Who are you? Some cowboy she has taken up with. Clara, you have truly sunk low." "I am Damien Crawford, and this is my property. Miss Ashford is here as my guest, and I am asking you politely to leave. If you do not, I will make you leave." "You have no right to keep her here," Marcus said, but there was uncertainty in his eyes now. Damien was taller and broader, with the kind of strength that came from years of hard labor, and Marcus was soft from city living. "I am not keeping her anywhere," Damien replied evenly. "She is free to go or stay as she chooses, but if she chooses to stay, I will protect her from anyone who tries to hurt her." Marcus looked past him to Clara. "Is this what you want, to live in this wasteland with this nobody? You could have a fine house in the city, servants, everything you deserve." "I deserve to be treated with respect and kindness," Clara said, stepping forward to stand beside Damien. "I deserve to make my own choices about my life. Those things are worth more than any fine house. Go home, Marcus. Tell Mr. Thornton I will never marry him. Tell him whatever you like, but leave me in peace." For a moment, Marcus looked like he might argue further, then his expression turned ugly. "Fine. Stay here in the dirt if that is what you want, but do not come crying to me when this life breaks you. You were always weak, just like Mother." He turned and stalked back to his horse, mounting roughly and spurring the animal into a gallop without a backward glance. They watched until he disappeared into the distance, and then Clara's knees buckled. Damien caught her, holding her steady as she shook with reaction. "It is over," he murmured into her hair. "He is gone." "What if he comes back?" Clara whispered. "What if he brings the law? He is my legal guardian. He could force me to return." Damien pulled back enough to look into her eyes. "Not if you are married. A husband's claim supersedes a guardian's. If you were my wife, he would have no legal right to you at all." Clara stared at him. "Are you proposing?" "I suppose I am," Damien said, his heart pounding. "But not because of your brother or not only because of him. Clara, these past weeks with you have been the best of my life. You are smart and strong and kind, and you make this house feel like a home. I was falling in love with you before Marcus ever showed up. I would be honored if you would truly be my wife, not just in name but in truth." Tears welled in Clara's eyes, but this time they looked like happy tears. "I thought perhaps you were only being kind, that you saw me as an obligation. I did not dare hope you might feel more." "I feel much more," Damien said softly. "I love you, Clara Ashford. I want to build a life with you if you will have me." "I love you too," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." He kissed her then, gently because she was still healing, but with all the feeling that had been building in him for weeks. She kissed him back with equal tenderness, her good arm wrapping around his neck. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. "We should go into town tomorrow," Damien said practically. "Get the preacher to marry us properly. That way, if Marcus does come back, there will be no question." "Tomorrow," Clara agreed, then laughed. "I came here expecting a marriage of convenience, and instead I found love. Life is strange." "Life is good," Damien corrected, "when you are brave enough to choose it." They married the next day in the small church in Skidoo, with the preacher's wife and the owner of the general store as witnesses. Clara wore a simple blue dress that brought out her eyes, and Damien wore his best shirt and pants, his hair still damp from scrubbing at the pump. The ceremony was short but meaningful, and when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Damien kissed his bride with a joy that made the small congregation smile. That night, in the privacy of their home, they came together as man and wife for the first time. Damien was careful of Clara's healing arm, gentle and patient as they learned each other. She was shy at first, uncertain, but his tenderness helped her relax. When it was over, she lay in his arms with her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I never knew it could be like this," she said quietly, "kind and sweet." "It should always be like this," Damien replied, stroking her hair. "Built on respect and care. That is what marriage ought to be." "Thank you," Clara whispered, "for seeing me, for saving me, for loving me." "Thank you for choosing me," Damien said, "for trusting me enough to stay." The months that followed were hard in the way that building any new life was hard, but they were good. Clara's arm healed completely, leaving only a faint scar as a reminder of what she had survived. She threw herself into making their ranch a success, tending a garden that she coaxed into production despite the harsh climate, raising chickens for eggs, and learning to help Damien with the cattle he was beginning to accumulate. The people of Skidoo accepted her readily. She was friendly and hardworking, and the women of the town appreciated having another educated woman to talk to. Clara started a small lending library out of their home, sharing her books with anyone who wanted to borrow them, and she began teaching reading to some of the children whose parents could not afford formal schooling. Damien watched her bloom in the desert sun, becoming more confident and joyful with each passing week. She laughed often, her humor dry and clever, and she met the challenges of ranch life with determination. He fell more in love with her every day, amazed by her strength and resilience. In December, Clara discovered she was pregnant. She told Damien one evening over dinner, her face glowing with nervous excitement. "A baby," Damien repeated, his voice full of wonder. "We are going to have a baby in July, the doctor thinks," Clara confirmed. "Are you happy?" "Happy." Damien stood and pulled her into his arms, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around carefully. "Clara, I am over the moon. You have given me everything I could ever want." The winter was mild by desert standards, and they spent the long evenings planning for the baby, talking about names and making a cradle from smooth pine wood. Clara knitted tiny clothes, and Damien added a room onto the house, wanting to make sure they had space for their growing family. In March, a letter arrived. It was from a lawyer in San Francisco, informing Clara that Marcus had died in a carriage accident. There was no mention of remorse or apology, just legal language about the settling of the estate. Clara read it twice, then folded it carefully and put it in the stove. "Do you need to go back?" Damien asked gently. "To settle his affairs?" "No," Clara said firmly. "Whatever he left can go to creditors or distant relations. I want nothing from him. My life is here now with you." Damien held her as she cried, not for the brother Marcus had been, but for the brother he might have been if he had chosen kindness over cruelty. When the tears stopped, she looked up at Damien with clear eyes. "I am free now," she said. "Truly free, not just legally but in here." She touched her heart. "I forgive him because holding on to anger would only hurt me, but I will never forget that I survived him and that I found something better." "You found your own strength," Damien said. "I was just lucky enough to be here when you needed a friend." "You are more than a friend," Clara said, standing on tiptoe to kiss him. "You are my husband, my partner, my love. You are everything." Their son was born on a scorching July afternoon in 1879. The midwife from town came to help, and Damien paced outside until he heard the baby's first cry. When he was finally allowed inside, he found Clara exhausted but radiant, cradling a red-faced infant with a surprising amount of dark hair. "We have a son," she said softly, looking up at Damien with shining eyes. "A healthy, perfect son." Damien knelt beside the bed, running a gentle finger over the baby's impossibly soft cheek. "He is beautiful. You are beautiful. Thank you, Clara." They named him Daniel Thomas Crawford, and he became the center of their world. Damien had never imagined he could love anything as much as he loved his son, watching him grow and change with each passing day. Clara was a natural mother, patient and loving, and seeing her with their child made Damien fall in love with her all over again. As Daniel grew from infant to toddler, the ranch prospered. Damien's cattle business expanded, and he hired 2 ranch hands to help with the work. Clara's garden became legendary in Skidoo, producing vegetables and herbs that seemed impossible in the desert climate. They were becoming established members of the community, respected and liked. On their 2nd wedding anniversary, Damien took Clara on a picnic to a spot in the mountains where a spring created a small oasis. They left Daniel with a neighbor and rode out in the cool of the morning, carrying a basket of food and a blanket. "You remember the day you arrived?" Damien asked as they sat beside the water, watching it trickle over smooth stones. "I remember being terrified," Clara admitted. "I was in so much pain, and I had no idea what kind of man you would be. I thought perhaps I had fled from one nightmare into another. And now I know I found my way home," Clara said simply. "I know that the worst thing that ever happened to me led me to the best thing. I would not change a single moment of my life if it meant not ending up here with you." Damien pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her hair. "I love you, Clara Crawford, more than I can ever properly say." "Show me instead," she said, smiling up at him with invitation in her eyes. They made love there by the spring, the desert sun warm on their skin and the sound of water a gentle music around them. Afterward, they lay tangled together, talking about their dreams for the future. They wanted more children, a house big enough for a large family, maybe even a bigger ranch operation. Every dream they spoke of was shared, built on the foundation of partnership and love they had created together. In 1881, Clara gave birth to their 2nd child, a daughter they named Rose Catherine. She had her mother's green eyes and her father's steady temperament, and Daniel adored his little sister from the moment he first saw her. The house rang with laughter and children's voices, and Damien often found himself stopping in the middle of a task just to appreciate the life he had built. One evening when Daniel was 4 and Rose was nearly 2, The family sat together on the porch watching the sunset. Daniel was playing with a wooden horse Damien had carved for him, making it gallop across the porch boards while Rose babbled happily in Clara's lap. Damien sat in his chair, watching them all with a contented smile. "What are you thinking?" Clara asked, catching his expression. "I am thinking that I am the luckiest man alive," Damien replied honestly. "I am thinking about the day you stepped off that stagecoach, how lost and hurt you looked, and how I wanted to protect you from the whole world. I am thinking that I had no idea then that you would become my whole world." Clara's eyes grew soft. "You saved me, Damien, not just from Marcus, but from a life where I never knew I could be strong. You gave me the space to heal and the courage to grow. You loved me when I was broken and celebrated me when I was whole." "You saved yourself," Damien corrected gently. "You chose to run. You chose to fight for your life. You chose to stay and build something new. I just got to be part of your story." "We are part of each other's stories now," Clara said, "and I cannot wait to see how it continues." The years continued to pass in a rhythm of seasons and growth. They added a third child, another son named James, and then a fourth, a daughter named Elizabeth. The house expanded to accommodate them all, and the ranch became one of the most successful in the region. Damien's reputation as a fair employer and honest businessman grew, and Clara's community work made her beloved in Skidoo. Daniel grew into a young man who loved the ranch life as much as his father did, learning the business from the ground up. Rose became a teacher, opening a proper school in town. James showed an interest in medicine, inspired by stories of his father's work as an army medic, and they sent him to study in Sacramento. Elizabeth, the youngest, had her mother's gift for growing things and expanded the garden into a small commercial operation, selling produce to the mining camps that dotted the region. Through it all, Damien and Clara's love remained the foundation everything else was built upon. They had their disagreements like any couple, moments of frustration or worry, but they always came back to the respect and affection that had marked their relationship from the beginning. Damien never raised his voice in anger, and Clara never feared his moods. They were partners in every sense of the word. On their 20th wedding anniversary in 1899, their children threw them a party that brought together friends from all over the county. There was music and dancing, food and laughter, and speeches from neighbors about what Damien and Clara meant to the community. When it was finally over and they were alone again, they stood together on their porch looking out at the land they had built their life on. 20 years, Clara said softly. Sometimes it feels like forever, and sometimes it feels like no time at all. Every one of them a gift, Damien replied, his arm around her waist. Her hair was threaded with silver now, and there were lines around her eyes, but to him she was as beautiful as the day she had arrived. More beautiful, because now he knew every facet of her soul. "You ever wonder what would have happened if you had not been there that day?" Clara asked. "If someone else had been my mail-order husband?" "I try not to," Damien admitted. "The thought of you with anyone else makes me grateful I responded to your advertisement when I did." "It was not my advertisement," Clara reminded him with a smile. "You placed the advertisement. I responded to it." "Best decision I ever made," Damien said. "Asking for a bride who was strong and kind and ready for a hard life. I got all that and so much more." "You got a woman with a broken arm and more trauma than sense," Clara said wryly. "I got the love of my life," Damien corrected. "I got a partner who made every struggle worthwhile and every joy deeper. I got you, Clara. That is everything." She turned in his arms and kissed him, long and sweet and full of 20 years of love. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. "Thank you for asking who did this," she whispered, referencing that first day when he had seen her injury. "Thank you for caring enough to be angry on my behalf. Thank you for being gentle when I needed gentleness and strong when I needed strength. Thank you for every day of these 20 years." "Thank you for trusting me," Damien replied. "For staying when you could have run. For building this life with me. For every morning I wake up beside you and every night I fall asleep knowing you are here. Thank you for choosing me." They stood together as the stars emerged overhead, the desert night cool and clear around them. In the house behind them, they could hear the faint sounds of their children settling in for the night, the grandchildren who had come for the party being tucked into beds. It was a full house, a full life, built from the ashes of pain into something beautiful and lasting. As they finally went inside, Damien took one last look at the land spreading out in all directions. He thought about the young man he had been when he first came here, searching for peace and purpose. He thought about the terrified woman who had stepped off the stagecoach with a broken arm and a broken spirit. And he marveled at how life could surprise you, how love could heal you, how two people who were little more than strangers could build something that would last generations. The years continued to be kind to them. They grew old together, their hair turning white and their bodies slowing down, but their love never diminished. They sat together on the porch in the evenings, holding hands and watching their grandchildren play in the yard where their own children had once played. They told stories about the old days, about the Wild West when Skidoo was barely more than a mining camp, and their ranch was just a dream. When Damien was 72, he fell ill with pneumonia. Clara nursed him through it with the same fierce determination she brought to everything, refusing to let him give up. When he recovered, weak but alive, the first thing he said was her name. "I am here," she told him, holding his hand tightly. "I am always here. I know," he said softly. "That is how I knew I could come back. You are my anchor, Clara. You always have been." They lived to celebrate their 40th wedding anniversary, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. The party was smaller and quieter than the one 20 years before, but no less joyful. Damien made a speech, his voice still strong despite his age. 40 years ago, I took a chance on a mail-order bride," he said, smiling at Clara. "I thought I was looking for someone to help me run a ranch, someone to share the practical burdens of this life. What I found instead was everything I did not even know I needed. Clara taught me that love is not about grand gestures or perfect moments. It is about showing up every day, choosing each other over and over again. It is about seeing someone at their worst and loving them anyway. It is about building something together that is stronger than either of you could build alone. These 40 years have been the greatest blessing of my life, and if I could go back and do it all again, I would not change a single thing." Clara stood and kissed him, tears streaming down her face, and everyone applauded. Later, when they were alone, she told him that she felt the same way, that every day with him had been a gift she never expected to receive. "I arrived with a broken arm and a broken heart," she said. "You healed both. You gave me a life worth living and a love worth fighting for. Everything good in my life flows from that day you asked to hurt me, and then made sure no one would ever hurt me again." Damien Crawford died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78, with Clara's hand in his. She sat with him for a long time after, just holding on, remembering all the years they had shared. When their children finally came to collect her, she was smiling through her tears. "He had a good life," she told them. "We had a good life together. I will miss him every day, but I am grateful for every moment we had." Clara lived another 3 years, staying in the house they had built together and tended by her children. She remained sharp and engaged until the end, still telling stories about the Wild West days, and the cowboy who had set her broken arm and then set about winning her heart. She passed away quietly on a spring morning in 1922, and her children buried her beside Damien on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together. The headstone was simple, reading Clara Ashford Crawford, 1857 to 1922, beloved wife, mother, and friend, and beside it Damien Crawford, 1846 to 1924, devoted husband, father, and partner. But the real monument to their love was all around, in the thriving ranch that still bore their name, in the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who carried their legacy forward, in the town of Skidoo where people still told stories about the mail-order bride with the broken arm and the cowboy who asked who did this. It was a love story built on trauma overcome and trust earned, on gentle hands setting broken bones and fierce hearts protecting what mattered most. It was a story of two people who found each other at exactly the right moment, when both needed someone to believe in them and help them believe in themselves. And it was a story that proved that sometimes the hardest beginnings lead to the happiest endings, if you are brave enough to stay and fight for the life you deserve. In the end, Clara and Damien's story was proof that love could heal even the deepest wounds, that kindness could triumph over cruelty, and that two broken people could come together and build something whole and beautiful that would last far beyond their own lifetimes. Their story became part of the legend of the West, a reminder that among all the violence and hardship, there were also moments of profound grace, and that sometimes all it took to change a life was one person asking the right question and caring enough to listen to the answer.